In the recording. Thank you. I'm now calling this Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, regular meeting of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District Board of Commissioners to order. The time is 7:02 p.m. Please note we're conducting a hybrid meeting, which allows staff and members of the public to attend this meeting via virtual teleconference. And this hybrid meeting will be video recorded and posted on the district's website. Because we are video conferencing, we will follow a strict protocol for the benefit of the recording. I will indicate when commissioners, staff, presenters, and the public will provide comments. If you've called into the meeting and are not using a webcam, please state your name prior to providing your comments for the benefit of the recording. Please practice considerate video conferencing etiquette by muting your line when you're not speaking and limiting distracted behavior on camera. District Clerk Vargas, please conduct a roll call.
Okay, Commissioners, I will be conducting all roll calls this evening in the same order. Please remember the order so that you are prepared to provide your comment or vote. President Spreen?
Here.
Vice President Sherlock?
Here.
Commissioner Basigi?
Here.
Commissioner McDonald?
Here.
Commissioner Tonka? Commissioner Tyson?
Here.
Commissioner Warren?
Here.
And we have 6 commissioners present. For the benefit of the recording, I will also conduct a presenters, consultants, and staff roll call. Community Education Risk Reduction Manager Gluhan?
Present.
Programs Planning Grants Manager Woods?
Present.
Technical Analyst / Project Manager Cronin?
Present.
Project Operations Manager Russell?
Present.
General Analyst Giorgi?
Present.
Technical Data Analyst Martinez?
Present.
Community Events Specialist Sachdeva?
Present.
Project Manager Administration Revlar?
Present.
Project Manager Risk Reduction King Rob?
Present.
Finance Manager Moriali?
Present.
General Manager Logan?
Present.
Deputy County Counsel Forbath?
Present.
And I noticed also we have Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council CEO Seth Chalet present.
Present.
Great, thank you. Presenters, consultants, and staff are accounted for.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to item 2, Commission President remarks. 2 things to mention. First, I will apologize for the upcoming fact that there will be a closed session in the middle of this. Actually, before we get to the really good presentation coming up later, originally that meeting was scheduled to be before as a special meeting, but for legal reasons that I can't fully explain, but doesn't matter, it got moved into this meeting. So that's hence the somewhat inconvenient meeting for those of you who are following, especially online. Apologize for the sort of slot in the meeting that you'll have to take a break during. Second thing, we have a somewhat sad thing to do, which is this is actually, I want everyone to take note, this is the final meeting for one of us as all eyes turn towards our Commissioner Joan Sherlock. And we want to take note on that this has been a 4-year term here. And it's been, this organization has changed a lot during your 4 years. And you should be, we're proud of having had you, and I hope you're proud of what's happened here. In fact, one of the things I want to point out is that we had like no communications at all when you first came on, and you came on board and really helped this group get started in terms of how do we as an organization go from 0 to something that's coherent and informational for all our residents. And you left your mark on this group, and we wanted to point that out and have everyone sort of take a note that this is your last meeting. And in that spirit of providing stuff for your new walls at your new place, first we have a I don't know if I'll stay seated here. We have a commendation. I don't want gosh, I'm gonna let you read it in the privacy of your own home. It's someone spent a lot of time.
Sounds amazing.
And all the whereases of the things you've done in terms of providing guidance and expertise related to outreach efforts, assisting staff in revisioning the district website, working the commission to support community and resident resiliency. Gosh, it just goes on. So
it's a long list. I want to thank you, and thank you for not framing it, because it's one more thing to pack. So I appreciate that.
Well, one more thing to pack. We also have, there's actually a proxy for, is you will be receiving a nice paperweight, crystal paperweight that so you can always remember us on your desk with all your things. It is on its way, not here, but this is what this represents. So everyone
my new
understands
desk.
that.
Oh my gosh,
Exactly.
my new wall and my new desk. Well, I just want to thank everybody. It's been such a pleasure working with you all, and I've learned so much. And staff, you've been amazing. I'm sorry Victoria's not here also, but it's been a great experience helping things grow and working together. You're just an incredible team. And it's been a rare pleasure. And same to my colleagues here. It's been wonderful. And I want to thank you for including me, and to Joe Sabidian for appointing me in the first place. And just, oh, and Jay, it's just been such a great experience. And Russ, all of you and Aaron, you do such great work and it matters so much. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Look forward to my paperwork. Thank you.
You know, Roger, we could force another meeting.
The bar and
we'll
grill.
talk about that later, unfortunately. All right. So moving on. Do we have any? Let's see. We'll now move on to public comment. Persons wishing to address the commission on any subject not on the agenda may do so now. Please note, however, the commission is not able to undertake extended discussion or action tonight on items not on the agenda. Items may be referred to staff for appropriate action, which may include placement on the next available agenda. District policy is to limit public testimony to 3 minutes per speaker unless the number of speakers requires me to impose shorter time limits. Do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda?
I am not seeing any online or in person.
Okay, great. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 4, which is the closed session. The commission will now adjourn to the closed session. Before we join the closed session, is there any public comment on this item?
I am not seeing any public comment.
Perfect. In that case, the commissioners and Deputy County Counsel Forbath will now adjourn to the closed session. We will rejoin this Zoom call upon completion of the closed session and return to open session to announce any reportable action. Members of the public and other attendees, you are welcome to remain on the call during the closed session. District Clerk Vargas, please note for the record the time is 7:08 p.m. General Analyst Georgie, please pause the recording. District Clerk Vargas, please note for the record the time is 7:36 p.m. Please conduct the roll call.
President Sprain,
Here.
Vice President Sherlock,
Here.
Commissioner Basigi,
Here.
Commissioner McDonald,
Here.
Commissioner Tyson,
Here.
Commissioner Warren,
Here.
and 6 commissioners are present.
Thank you. Deputy County Counsel Forbath, please announce any reportable action from the closed session.
No reportable actions were taken in closed session.
Thank you. Let's see. We will now move on to item 6, agenda amendments and changes. I'd like to propose that item 6 or 8A, the fire chief report for October 2024, and item 8B, Palo Alto Fire Station 8 report for October 2024, be moved to the consent calendar. Chief Kirkall will be in attendance at the January Commission meeting to give the annual report for 2024. I'd also like to propose a correction to the agenda title for item 12C. The employment position title should be Administrative Specialist to match the proposed employment position description and employment agreement included in the agenda packet. Deputy County Counsel, do you have any other items to propose?
Yes, after consulting with staff, I recommend that item 10, the resolution establishing the FY 2024 and 2025 appropriations limit, otherwise known as the GAN limits, be held to the next meeting. And that's because there was a miscommunication with the Controller Treasurer Department about the posting requirements for the GAN limit resolution. And I also recommend holding to the next regular meeting item 12E, Resolution 2414, which is an amendment to the Conflict of Interest Code. And that's because we're still consulting with the Office of the County Executive about the appropriate designations for the new positions we're creating. And we have 90 days to amend our Conflict of Interest Code to incorporate those new positions.
Great, thank you. Any commissioners like to make any additional changes? In that case, I will now entertain a motion to move items 8A and 8B to the consent calendar, to correct the agenda item for item 12C, and to hold items 10 and 12E to the next regular commission meeting.
Warren so moves.
Thank you.
Tyson seconds.
Perfect. This item's open for discussion. Any discussion for the commission? Seeing none. Any public comment on this item? We have one. Great. Thank you. We'll take note for that. Any other public comments? Seeing
I don't see any.
none. Great. In that case, let's vote. District Clerk Vargas, please conduct a roll call.
President Spreen,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Basiji.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Great. Now moving on to item 7, the consent calendar. Are there any comments from staff on these items? Anything that need to be added? Nope. Any questions from the commission on any consent items? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion and a second. You have a motion from the
McDonald seconds.
McDonald seconds. Items open for discussion. Any discussion on these items? Hearing none. Any public comment on the consent calendar items?
I see none.
Seeing none, let's now vote.
President Spreen,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Basiji.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Thank you very much. Moving on, since item 8 was moved to consent, we will now move on to item 9, which is the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget development. Item 9A is to receive the preliminary draft budget for discussion and direction to staff. Finance Manager Morreale, you will please present this item.
Yeah, I think there's an issue with the volume on the public.
Wherever you're comfortable is totally fine.
Corey, if you can please put up the presentation, that would be great. Thank you. And that would be to page 1, please. Okay, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, and members of the commission, thank you for this opportunity to speak about the fiscal year 25-26 preliminary draft budget. We're calling it preliminary because that's in fact what it is at this point in time. The budget process started in September, and we have worked with staff through the last 2 months or so and developed the draft that's before you as we speak. And next slide, please.
Before you proceed, let me ask, would your preference be that if there questions arise as you go through it, would you like the commissioners to ask questions at the time? Or would you like to hold them until a certain period after?
I would love for it to be a discussion, so you can ask questions anytime during the course of the presentation, please.
Thank you. And
Just-
commissioners, please feel free to speak up anytime. Thanks.
Very good. So this evening, what I really want to present is the budget, of course, and also talk about the themes and the approach that was taken when we worked with all the service area managers and the staff. We intend tonight to give a fiscal overview, a high-level overview, but I want to make the point that this is really a different budget. We're proposing a new budget model. In particular, we're proposing the introduction of what we call a capital improvement fund, and I'll discuss that more at length as we go into the slides. So it is a different era for us in budgeting. We think a really good one that really will help us with the initiatives going forward. But that's a key point in this budget introduction this evening. We'll go through revenues and expenditures as well as we do every year. And we'll talk about our fund balance and how it's being utilized. Lastly, I'll introduce the fiscal team. And at the same time, we'll accept comments and suggestions. And of course, we're looking for direction. As you know, past this meeting, there will be 2 more iterations of meetings dealing with the budget before we go into the county cycle. So the direction we receive from you this evening will be really important and critical for staff as we develop the next iteration. We did meet with the ad hoc subcommittee, consisted of President Spreen, Commissioner Basiji, on November the 12th. It was also an open meeting, open to the public, and both the staff report and the documents attached to your agenda this evening do reflect comments received at that particular meeting. There were no quantitative numeric changes made, but there were observations about a presentation, and so that's been included in this presentation this evening. Next slide, please. So you know that we created a service area manager budget going back almost 2 years now. And this past year was the first time we presented that service area manager budget and presented it to the commission and to the public. We're really pleased with that product because when we developed the budget this year, we met with all the service area managers as we did last year, but we took a focus on the dollars that translate into their service areas. And so in meeting with them and service area managers met with their staff. Really, the question we asked is these in front of you. We had several questions that we really wanted to push in their direction and in creating this budget. One was, how do we keep the momentum going? We just came off of the audit for the 23-24 year, and we saw great momentum in programs, especially projects and programs in particular. If you look at evacuation routes, you look at chipping, you look at the HIZ program, community outreach, we're seeing those programs really take force. And so we mentioned to the managers, what can we do this year to make sure that that momentum continues? But also this budget is very different than last year. It plans for some pretty large scale projects related not to I-280, and you'll see I-280 is a major theme in this budget. And for the first time, we're really putting forward the concept of the possibility of a new fire facility. So that's also a major theme in this budget, a major focal point. But we realized also in discussion with our managers and just in the course of operations during the year, we can't get all this work done without leveraging our contracts with all our contracting experts. And you'll see that we put more dollars into service area contractors in particular to help us with the initiatives that you see in this budget. So that was also one of the comments that we made to the managers as we approach this budget cycle. Leverage your contract services to make sure that we optimize delivery. As we mentioned last year, though, we continue to monitor the gap between budget and actual. We do have a disparity between budget and actual. We want to lessen that gap over time, but it will take time. We are a disaster response organization. And in that regard, we have to make sure that we plan for uncertainties, and planning for uncertainties means you have to have contingencies and you have to have that bandwidth to address those as they happen. But at the same time, I would say it's a 2-3 year process where we're going to see the district sharpening its pencil, and those budget to actual should get closer and closer, not too close where you don't have flexibility, but closer to closer over time. And so we keep that same aspiration that we want to make sure that that happens. And budget for unknowns, and you'll see that also in this budget. So this is the exact conversation we had with our service area managers when we met 2 months ago. And I want to say I believe they've delivered on that. Next slide, please. Our focus. We presented this as a budget focus. I already mentioned keep the momentum. I explained that already. But on the lower bottom half of the lower section of this slide, we also want to keep the momentum, but at the same time, in putting forth all the dollars and allocations in the budget, we want to do so in a way that helps us realize the work plans. We realize this year that the work plans are really part of our lifeblood. It really guides what we do in each service area. So if we're putting dollars towards an effort, it should help us achieve what's in the work plan. So those two are the boundaries, if you will, of the focus in the budget. The blue boxes in between really points to items that we concentrated in that reflect how this budget has changed. Firstly, you'll see dollars in this budget to really put a strong effort into the possibility of a new fire facility. And you'll see that in particular in the fire service area. I-280 is such a significant project. Commissioner Warren mentioned it the best a couple of meetings ago when he mentioned the complexity and the scale of this project. It certainly is complex. It certainly is large scale. You'll see not only the project dollars for these, which are large in year 2, approximately $3 million. But we also know that project, when it hits the ground, will impact we believe all areas, all service area staffing and work that's done. So it's central to the dollars, and it's central to the focus in this budget. HIZ is much smaller dollars, but we have seen a tremendous surge in HIZ from 2 years ago, $9,000, this year, $100,000. And we're actually projecting for this current year that we're in, we might meet our mark of $300,000. And I just look at that, and I look at that HIZ team, and I say, my gosh, all the pistons are firing. And so even though the dollars are smaller, the connection to fire safety is so critical. And so that to us rose to a point of key discussion. Of course, outreach and emergency preparation, disaster coordination is key. You'll see the dollars have not been lessened in that. We've kept the momentum in those areas. You'll see additional professional service dollars in this budget, and that it's, again, to leverage our ability to deliver. In the same discussion point of a potential new fire facility, it's not in this budget per se, but we know in the future, and maybe in the real near future, we'll be coming back to this commission to talk about, well, what would that look like if we had a new fire facility? What would that look like in terms of future projections, in terms of costs, dollars, and projects? So it's not in the budget that you'll see, but it's in our mind, if you will. We know that discussion is coming. I could see that evolving into a 5 to 10 year forecast where we project out the possibility and have those discussions. Of course, all these decisions hinge upon your approval, of course, and of course the ratification and approval of the county, but you'll see these discussions are starting. Professional development, we've asked staff to make sure that they have all the professional development needs that they do need, and you'll see an increase in dollars for staff training and professional development. Technology, there's not a lot of technology dollars, but we realize that technology is really important in further advancing our models and our methods and our efficiencies. So we started with payroll this past year. We're going to be moving on to financial systems, possible document management systems. You won't see those dollars per se. They are included in the current year budget, but the concept is important, that we keep technology in mind. The more and more we get the more and more we make our practices sophisticated, technology is part of that equation for us. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we get into what this new model could look like. And for the first time, I'm going to be discussing kind of a bifocal view of how we look at our funds. The blue circles and the blue description of professional services and staffing really deal with where most of the dollars that have increased in this budget are going. But they also point to the fact that we are going to be suggesting a new fund. And in that new fund, excuse me.
Can I join?
Someone's got your mic on if you're zoomed in.
What are you guys doing? Oh, thanks.
Okay.
I'll join you guys.
Are we okay, Corey? Okay, so the dark blue circles, it's the previous slide, Corey. Thank you. This is where all the dollars are going. But I'll mention to you in a minute that this new CIP fund that we are recommending, it will capture the costs for the I-280 and will capture the costs potentially for the fire facility in the future and the dollars to assess a fire facility. And I'll describe why we are doing that. The gray bubbles to the right really portray what our operating fund or our general fund will look like in the future. It will be more routine, more consistent, more normalized when we get these larger dollar projects out of it. So this is the world we are proposing for this commission to consider and give us direction on. Next slide, please. Okay, a lot of dollars here. And I don't mean on this slide to get into how the budget has changed per se, but I wanted to give you a preview of what a capital improvement fund world might look like. If you look at the third column to the right, which I think is called the preliminary draft budget 25-26, that's the total budget that we're presenting this evening. It's basically $22.27 million in expenditures, $17.8 million in revenues, use of funds of 4.5. But what I'm illustrating here is that under this capital improvement project model, we will be bifurcating the general fund and creating another fund called the Capital Improvement Fund. So it would take on the I-280 project costs in total, projected for the new year to be $2.7 million, $2,750,000. And we put in there $715,000 to look at the possibility of a new fire facility. And that would potentially include a study, design, architectural review, review of the soil and the land where it's proposed. All those costs are in there as well. Without getting into the detail of the budget at this moment, because I realize it's premature to do so, if we create a CIP fund, this is what it would look like. We would present to you two funds in the future, and the CIP fund would be seeded with dollars for these initiatives, and it also would be seeded with the potential cost of a fire facility, which at this time we're estimating to be $15 million. So this proposes allocation within a new fund and the transfer of dollars from the general fund to the CIP fund of $15 million along with the project costs. So maybe I'll pause at this point because I know this is it's a big concept. And if there's any questions on this before I get into describing how the budget has changed.
Okay.
This isn't so alien to me to have an operating fund and then a capital fund. So I recognize it's a big change here, but it's not so different from what I've seen in the rest of my life.
Yes, and Commissioner Tyson, thank you for that, because it's one of the questions we received at the ad hoc meeting as well. It is a very common practice to have a capital improvement fund, and it also helps a lot by normalizing your general fund and not seeing the spikes and troughs in the general fund as well. But I do want to underscore the point that what we are proposing, if this budget goes forward in this direction, we are proposing at least an initial estimate of $15 million for the fire facility that would be transferred into that fund. That estimate is purely an estimate. It will be solidified by actual engineering estimates that come through when those studies are done as we further that process. But that's in the mix of proposals here with this budget this year.
It's also fair to say that it's on that people should recognize that specifying this way is not budgeting it and approving it for that use at all. It is essentially just moving it over to this fund, so it's reserved for us to be able to use it if we choose going forward.
Yes,
just to get the wording correctly in terms of what that.
Well, it would be identified as potentially for the fire facility, but it's not locked in. Right. It's not locked in. It's subject to adjustment in the future. It's subject to change, but it is making the statement that we believe enough in the possibility of a fire facility that we're going to seed this money into the fund to show that the funds are potentially that are available. Right. So it is making a statement about a fire facility. Yes.
And the other question I'll put out there, which I know it'll be a common question, is calling it a capital improvement fund. Clearly, a fire facility is a capital improvement. How do you define I-280 project as being part of a capital improvement fund? I think I know the answer, so but I know that others have asked it, so I want to make sure get it out there in the open.
Yes, there will be an opportunity, I would say, as soon as January, where if the commission says this is the proper direction to go in, that we would come back with a definition of what this fund would be, and in that resolution of definition, it would name the type of things that could go into a capital improvement fund. We'll work with the county, on that definition, but not everything that goes into the capital improvement fund has to be capitalizable. We're suggesting that the I-280 fund go in there because of its size and scale and multi-year nature. And what this type of fund allows us to do, it allows us to isolate it and track it, and make sure that the accounting for it is clearly defined and not mixed with operations. And so there's a benefit there. Clearly, when the I-280 starts rolling, if you will, and the RFPs and the service contracts are signed and the process starts, we'll be working really diligently with all the contractors, and they will be reporting dollars to us. We'll be looking to budget to actual on a contract basis, and this allows us to track it definitively. So it parses it out so it does not get confusing, and it's trackable. We can work with the definition of capital improvement fund when we bring it back in January, but yes, I've seen them used for both. Not all items are capitalizable.
And certainly the key benefit to me is to see that way we have the word spikes is what gets me, especially since large projects take multiple years. And so budgets get really strange when you've got different things from different big projects going in and out. It's really hard to sort of look year to year and make comparisons. I assume this makes our general fund year to year comparisons have a lot more relevance when these big one-time spikes are preserved in a different fund.
Yes, one example would be the fire truck, which we purchased in the prior year. And as you might recall, last year, I reported that, oh my gosh, we went down by $2 million. Well, that's because the fire truck came out of the general fund. I've seen even capital equipment go into the capital improvement fund. Now, we have a different nuance here. We funded Central Fire for that. But that doesn't mean you can't find a way in a fund like this, something like this, to isolate and record it, and that's what we're proposing.
The other argument I've heard mentioned is that we're really, with the 280 project, creating an asset. This is a part of the fuel break around the entire town that was going to be maintained going forward. So we are creating something new with a big wallop of initial dollars to create. So that's the other thing I want to.
Yes, and we'll work with the county, post this meeting, if this is the proper direction, to say, how do we create this fund, define this fund so that it fits all these parameters, and will be consistent with the county practices.
I think Jim has
I just want to add to what President Spring said. It is a deliverable that we get, and that's ours to keep and maintain over a number of years to come. It's a very distinct from everything else we are doing. It's a fire break, but it's also a deliverable to the community. And to me, that if that doesn't fit the definition of a capital in process, I don't know what does.
Any other comments from Commissioner? Great.
Okay, and next slide, please. I will mention that on the bottom of that slide, you'll see, if you can go back, Corey, you'll see that it's proposing $18,815,000 made up of fire facility, $15 million, professional services to assess the fire facility as a possibility of $715,000, and the I-280 allocation of $3.1 million, which includes a roll forward from the current year. So that's the proposal of what potentially would be transferred into there. So again, what would this look like if this were done? This graph is very telling. The green sections of the graph are very telling because the green section represents unassigned fund balance. The other benefit, if you will, and I think it communicates this properly to the community as well, of putting dollars into a CIP fund is they're not as available, they're somewhat more reserved. And so what that does is it makes a statement that we've reserved these dollars for these potential benefits. Some are definitive, like the $715,000. Some are still subject to study. But you can see what would happen if this fund was introduced is that the unassigned would go down to $7.6 million. The CIP, which We'll work with the county on the definition, but from my perspective, CIPs typically render what's called an assigned definition, which they're assigned by the governing body. And then the committed, which we've always had the committed here, would be 18 million. But you can see it's a dramatic change in how these funds are defined now going forward, should this commission approve it and the county approve this direction. We have had initial discussions with OBA, and it seems promising that we can go in this direction, but those discussions are just early on in the process. Okay, so with that, and I know that was a big haul because it's a completely new concept, but now I'd like to get into how our budget has changed. Okay, so on the right bottom half of your slide, you'll see last year's budget, which was $18.58 million. And you'll see the percentage of allocations by service area, if you will, or category. Our new budget is $22.3 million, and that's a difference of about $3.7 million. The percentage of allocations remains somewhat the same, except you'll see the big shift in life and safety projects and programs. Whereas last year it was 24%, this year it's proposed at 30%. That in essence makes up the lion's share of the change in the percentages between these two charts. There is staffing is about the same, although this budget is recommending the addition of 2 additional staff members. And you'll see that professional services has gone up as well to support all these initiatives. Overall, 74% of all the allocations were related to the core life and safety projects. This year it's 72%. Again, as I mentioned last year, if you really add in staffing to life and property, I really think we're in the mid 80% of every dollar going towards concentrated life and property efforts. So it goes from 18.58 to 22.3, and the next slide will kind of show graphically in a different way where these changes took place. There's 4 areas in particular. The normal central fire contract increase, and I'll get into why that changed, but it's a expected and normal change. Really, the big dollar changes are under the projects and programs. And you can see the big dollar change there. I'll let the cat out of the bag. Most of that is I-280, and we'll see that in a minute. There is also an increase in staffing costs, and a commensurate increase in professional services for the large dollar initiatives. So these 4 areas is where you'll see the dollars change between the budget years. And next slide. Okay, so now I can talk about the budget in particular. So you've already seen the general fund, the CIP fund, and the total. I'll concentrate on the total fund. In essence, it's a $22.3 million expenditure budget, a $17.8 million in revenues, and a use of funds of $4.5 million. That represents a 19.85% increase in expenditures and an 8.34% increase in revenue. And then I'll go through each area of line items in particular. But if you look at the dollars above by category, you'll see the big dollar changes are in projects and programs. You'll see also salaries and benefits, maybe our second largest. And then that'll be followed by our contract services for professional services and contract services for fire. And next slide, please. Okay, this shows you the change in total, the same numbers I described. And in the next following slides, I'm going to describe exactly what happened with revenue and exactly what happened with expenditures by category. Okay, next slide, please. Revenue's fairly easy to explain.
That's 24, 25, the first column, right? In the both, it's a slide.
Oh, yes, it is. Thank you so much. That should be 24, 25. Thank you. That's a correction. And it may be like that on all of them, so I apologize. Thank you so much. property tax secured, we estimated that goes up by 4%. That's purely an estimate based upon trends. It's probably being very safe in terms of our estimate. I think last year we were in the 6% range or so. But having said that, we won't know the actual revenue numbers until the county gives it to us in late December. So these numbers will certainly change. It's just our initial estimate that we're putting forth right now this evening. So it will change December. It may also change again before February as well. But we expect somewhere in that 4, 5, 6% range. We'll see what the county projects there. The whole really game this year is interest earnings. Interest earnings has doubled. And it's doubled because interest rates have skyrocketed. We have a large fund balance, of course, that is playing off of, but it's really the rate increases that makes a difference. So this explains the fact that we're getting $1.3 million of additional revenue this projected year over last year. And we're pretty confident in that number, and we'll report back in January to this commission what the county's projection is. And we go full faith with the county's projection once they give it to us. Next slide. I do want to talk a little bit about interest, though, because interest is interesting. These are two yield to maturity charts that come from the Santa Clara County investment pool, which we invest our money in. And if you look to the lower left, you'll see that ranges from 22 to 23. And you can see in early 22, we were in the 1% range. And before that, we were below 1%. And it started to evolve during 22, 23. And then you can see what happened in 23, 24. We've gone from 3% to we're nearly at 4% now in earnings. So over the course of 2 years, we've gone from 1% to 4%. So it's a significant increase in rates. We tend to be, conservative on the revenue side, but I just can't avoid it anymore. It's here. This is what we're seeing happening. Last year, we anticipated it might moderate. It really did not moderate. It kind of stayed there and went up. So we're projecting that healthy increase this year, which leads me to the next slide and a little bit of a detour here, but I realize I've never really talked about, how the district funds are invested, but I just wanted to ensure the community that it's invested with the county pool. It's a really good pool. It's a very safe pool. And I just, for the community's interest, display the type of investments and the ratings that they invest in. They are all in A or AA or AAA investments or above, highly rated investments. Their earnings do extremely well. They're not too high, they're not too low. They're right where you expect them to be. And we're very, very comfortable being part of that pool. And later on this year, we can talk more about the type of investments that the county makes. But for the most part, they are federal agencies and bonds, secure federal type of investments, as well as high grade corporate bonds. And that's what they invest in. So a little bit of a detour there, but I thought with this much interest income, we should start talking a little bit about our investments at the county pool. Next slide, please. So now what I'd like to do, if the difference between last year's expenditures and this year's expenditures is $3,690,000, $98. And I'm going to explain each rung here of these changes. I'll explain fire, IHFR, CWPP, salaries, wages, and benefits, infrastructure, and other items of note. The other non-major is really just that. Those are small dollar changes that make up the delta, but I will explain the first 6 rungs of this ladder, if you will. So with that, fires, pretty straightforward. We estimated that the fire contract will go up by essentially its maximum contract value of 5%. So that explains the $370,000 increase in the fire contract. In discussion with General Manager Logan, we believe we will be staffing Palo Alto Station 8 for an additional month's time, as we did this year. So we projected that additional month's time at $98,000. So that in total represents the sum total of increase in that service area of $469,120. Okay. In the IHFR, CWPP, and the general projects area, this is where you see the biggest change in terms of dollars. The first one goes without saying. You're all aware of it. It's the I-280 project. Year one last year was $1 million. This is year two of that project. We're projecting it to be $2,750,000. That's a $1,750,000 increase. That is simply year two of that project. General Manager Logan could speak to that, and I know there's a report later on this agenda speaking to I-280, but that process has started, and we fully expect it to be, to be kicking in full gear in 25, 26. We did increase projects and programs contingencies in general for IHFR, and we did that because with I-280 hitting and the strong momentum and all the other projects, we felt having more contingency is prudent for programs and projects in general. So we did that to allow for the large scale of dollars that are coming in and the large projects that are coming in, and knowing that how that will affect all staff as well. So it was really just a judgment call. With the scale increasing so much, let's increase our contingency. So we increased that by $275,000. You've heard Eugenia speak about the programmatic environmental impact report. It was first estimated to be, I think, $100,000. It's coming in at $350,000. So we ramped up that budget to an additional $150,000 for the most current costing of that project. So that's the dedicated, the DUDEC programmatic EIR, its latest costing that we received this particular year. Other projects and programs changed, some up, some down, some up, some down. Those changed by about $157,000 or 5%. And we moderated emergency access roads. The more and more we looked at that, we realized that there's a lot of discussion that needs to take place there with legal and easements and jurisdictional rights. So we moderated that just to focus in on the study more than the actual work. So that accounts for the $2.2 million change in projects and programs in particular, with most of it being in IHFR and CWPP. Okay, this is salaries and wages and benefits. If we look at salaries and wages and benefits, the core increase in salaries and wages was 9.78%. That's assuming we had made no other hires. That's the increase from year to year. And you might think, well, that's kind of a high percentage. It's explainable when you consider that a couple things. Two of the positions last year were expected to be hired mid-year. So those positions now are fully costed for a full 12 months. And I think that was the admin specialist, and I think it was the project specialist as well. Additionally, we hired several people during the year, and in the hiring process, we brought them in at a salary commensurate with their skill level. But in general, you'll see most of the salary increases were ranging around the 4 to 5%, but there were those changes that bring it up to 9%. The largest dollar changes in salaries and wages is the proposal of 2 new positions. One new project specialist. It's assigned to personnel, but to be assigned later based upon need. And one new project manager. Again, recorded in personnel and to be assigned later based upon need. The other thing I should mention about the budget this year is that you'll see that we've integrated, if you look at the Exhibit A by line item, you'll see that we are very happy to report that benefits are now a reality. So benefits are included in the line items on a salary basis. So that dream is now a reality. QSERA is in place. 457 will be in place within the next 2 months. So we projected it fully for 25, 26. And next slide. This is what you'll find in infrastructure. So in infrastructure, you'll see an increase of $365,000 specifically for the fire facility. Total allocation there is $715,000. That represents an increase of $365,000 over last year. And it's what I've mentioned already. It's dollars to potentially realize that vision. There are some decreases, and that has to do with the fact that we have vehicles in the current year budget, but we don't have vehicles proposed in the new year budget. So that's a decrease. And we have in the current year budget $250,000 of an allocation for AI, fire prevention AI, in coordination with the county, although those discussions are still preliminary, they're still ongoing. We'll probably ask the county to roll these dollars forward, but at this point, we don't know, when that next step will be. So we didn't rebudget it, but we may ask the county to roll those dollars forward into 25, 26. Yes.
First line item, fire facility engineering, site design, so forth. This is the bottom up, right? And it's broken down by month. What task is done, what month, and what we're probably these monies that are ultimately end up with
At this point, it is purely an estimate based upon our judgment as to what these type of services would cost. In general, I know from experience that when dealing with engineering services, it's very easy to reach $250,000 for these type of services. So we looked at the various elements of this that we would need, and our initial estimate was 715. Could be high. I don't think so, but it could be. But having said that, we wanted to make sure we didn't miss opportunity to allow for that allocation. I think General Manager Logan, you want to speak to that a little bit more, because I know that process is kind of going on as we speak.
Yes, thank you. The I-280 ad hoc committee is going to give a report after this, and I think they'll take that into account. But right now we have two solicitations that are going to be looking for professional engineering services. And so these are estimates.
Yeah, General Manager Rogan, I was just looking at the fire facilities engineering, oversight, design, and procurement to the amount of $715,000. I was wondering if there's a breakdown.
No, it's an estimate.
Purely
It's
top level.
purely top level. But by the time we get into February, we're going to have some definite numbers on that, because we'll go through the solicitation process and then be able to see what those engineering firm comes in at. And so I think that will be very helpful. But they're basically for the engineering firm consulting and then design architectural approach to the fire facility. Yeah. And Mark, you can speak to that maybe a little more.
We've got it set up for the 280.
Yeah.
Presentation.
Report to come, sir.
So this is infrastructure, and I think the next slide. Other items of note, we increased temporary services because we really do feel it's going to be 25, 26 is going to be a very busy year with everything going on. And so we have several options. We have the proposed new staffing. We have the professional services that we need to help us deliver. But at the same time, we need that relief factor to know that if we need temporary services, we can call on them. So we increased temporary services across the board for all service areas. If the managers say, look, we do need additional help, we wanted to allow that possibility. And it does give us those three aspects of possibilities in terms of resources for the year. General legal services and general professional services went up by $112,000. I can tell you firsthand, I work with Aaron all the time and his staff, and our need for legal services. First of all, it's wonderful to have the legal service, but it's increasing. It's increasing because the activity is increasing, and we see that even increasing more in the future, especially with these large dollar projects and contracts that are going through. I've spent hours with Aaron just on purchasing 2 trucks, and that's just 2 trucks. And the point is that we do see a need for legal services ramping up, and not all of this is a change in legal, but about half of this amount is change in legal. The other is just general professional services. And staff development, staff training for all areas and all staff went up by $48,000. So with that, I think that is the last of the tally. But before I move off of this, I wanted to show projects and programs in mass, because all of our allocations are important, all our staffing is important, but projects and programs has a special place, right? Because it's a community deliverable that community can see. And I wanted to just to show the commission what this looks like. So the 24-25 budget was $4.5 million in projects and programs. It's 6.5. Obviously, I-280 makes up a big difference. But I want to draw your attention to chipping, HIZ, evacuation routes. The managers did not lose the momentum. You see they're still expecting the same robust expenditure level that they expected last year. And so they kept the momentum, they kept it going. And that's what you have here for the new year for projects and programs for the community. The contingency did change by $275,000. I mentioned that. And the rest of the programs, for the most part, pretty docile changes. But the big dollar deliverables are still big dollar deliverables, and they're achievable from our perspective. Next slide, please. This is what it looks like by service area. We have not provided a service area budget yet. We will in January, but this is what it looks like. And as you can see, IHFR takes the lion's share of the changes, and deservedly so, because of the large dollar projects. You can see fire services, the change that I talked about there. And personnel really sees the bulk of the staffing increases that were proposed. If you see changes in other areas like outreach and finance, we reallocated several positions. We took a look at several positions, and we reallocated based upon where individuals are working. And most of those changes are reallocation of staffing. And next slide, please. Okay, so I will stop there before I talk about rollovers, because rollovers is a different concept. But any questions up to this point? Okay. You may recall that last year, for the very first time, we worked with the county, and they allowed us to roll forward dollars from year to year. And this past year, from 23-24, they allowed us to roll forward the fire truck, and they allowed us to roll forward fixed assets for $262,500. Okay, so this budget that we presented tonight does not include roll forwards, and I did that deliberately, because if I included roll forwards, it would make the variances look just really strange, really strange. So when we come back to you in January, keep in mind that we will display these rollovers. We'll show you how they work in. And that which means the $22.3 million budget may in fact be $25.6 million budget when the roll forwards are added in. We also this year, the county approved the funding of an additional fire truck of $2.3 million. That also is subject to roll forward. So we'll find an elegant way to show this, but these numbers are in play. What's interesting about how the county does their budgeting process is that when they give us their recommended budget sometime in April, May of next year, they have this process where they take out the roll forwards. So they put them in and they take them out, subject to discussion. So keep that in mind. I know it will get confusing, but the roll forwards will be interesting, because we'll go through a process where this commission potentially approves this budget. The county then will come back with a budget that excludes one-time items, excludes roll forwards, and then we'll have a discussion with them about how they could be added back in. So it's kind of a circuitous route, but we'll get there. So, but I wanted to point out that the roll forwards are significant and they're sizable. They're not subject to change at this point. They simply are in there based upon the fact that the county has approved them to go into this budget. But I'll find a way in January to kind of roll this in somehow. With that, I before we take questions, I just want to thank the entire team. And the entire team is really everybody. It's every staff member, it's every service area manager was involved in this process. And it was a fast process, but a really involved one and a lot of good communication. But, I want to, of course, General Manager Logan for her leadership. Serena's not here in person, but Serena's a huge part of this budget process. She was at every project manager meeting, help us develop, help us reconcile. Of course, Corey, can't say enough about Corey and all her work. Eugenia, Victoria, Denise, and all the staff members. We could not do this without them. So with that, that is the preliminary budget.
Thank you so much. A very comprehensive report on a very complex item, and that's core to what we're doing. Any other questions or overall comments from commissioners?
Very impressive.
Excellent. Thank you. Over here. Like I see, in that case, I guess we would, let's see, we would take some public comments on this. I imagine you might have some public comments.
Alan Epstein, I live in the district. First, I want to congratulate Russ on the wonderful presentation that he did and all the work, and the staff on all the work that they put together to do the presentation. It really is an impressive presentation. I just have a few comments and questions. First, with regards to revenue, I believe that the tax revenue is understated, and I think you'll find that to be the case when you get the numbers. The numbers for 25 are actually available today, the estimated actual for 25. And so those numbers could be included in the document that you've prepared. Of course, 26 numbers are not available at this point in time. The question about setting up a capital fund, I did raise the question at the meeting as to whether it's appropriate to raise a capital fund at this point in time, whether operating expenses, which is really what the I-280 project is, represent capital expenditures. But more important than that is the issue about a new fire station. I don't believe there's been any real discussion about a fire station. There certainly hasn't been any needs analysis performed with regards to why a fire station is necessary or what the nature of that fire station would be. I certainly don't have a problem in terms of setting aside funds for it, but I think the more appropriate way to do that at this point in time would be to do it as a commitment as opposed to setting up a CIP and transferring the funds in for that. I'll have more to say about the fire station when the engineering thing comes up. I think if you look at the budget, the district has had huge gaps in terms of its actuals to budget numbers on the order of $4 million in the last few years. And I think this budget will represent the same type of large difference between actual and budget. Just a couple of things on the budget's particulars. I think if you subtract out the I-280 project, there isn't any substantial growth in the project programs. And as a result of that, I kind of question why 2 additional people are necessary if there isn't really any growth in the project program area. So that's a question that I have. There's some numbers down in the asset area, $60,000 for commercial Starlink. I don't know what commercial Starlink is. $24,000 for printers. We don't even have a building. I don't know where you're going to put $24,000 worth of printers. And then lastly, I think if you look at the cash situation, the ending cash balance, projected ending cash balance isn't what the starting cash balance is. The projecting ending cash balance is like 40, I'm sorry, I can't read it. But anyways, I think there's $3 million difference between the ending cash balance for 25 and what the starting balance is for 26. So I think there's going to be a lot more cash than what the number projects. I think the budget is padded like the budgets have been in the past. And I do question some of the items, as I've mentioned. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk. And
Thank
thanks
you.
again, Russ, for the hard work.
Thank you. A couple quick responses just from myself is one is I think the focus on actual versus budget is it's certainly fair to bring that up, and that's why it's a focus for us to try and address that. And as I mentioned, it's a multi-year process to do that, but something we're all very aware of. So I agree with you on that in terms of it being something, and I think we're addressing it. One thing I mentioned is the commercial Starlink. I believe what this is, and I haven't talked to anyone about it, but I believe what it is for the emergency program, the CERT program, Starlink is becoming one of the most valuable ways we can keep communication during major power outages and emergencies. And right now, we only have, I think, a consumer grade package that has some limitations. We can't use at certain times and certain things. So this is saying, look, this is a key to our emergency services. I think that the town is also doing that as well. So that's what that is. It's moving to a rating where we can really use it during emergencies and guarantee that it's there and always available for us. That's one little detail item.
Yes, that's absolutely it. And you're right. The commercial is much more expensive, but it is much more robust.
Right.
And it accommodates it. The printers, simply, we've just seen a need as clear, as evident as today with printers, problems that we have. So we're thinking about some laser jets at the home office facilities to allow for printing when they're needed.
Yeah, I did print my stuff at my home because we didn't have one here to do it. So yeah, so there's reasons behind, good questions to ask, and there are good answers behind them all. Any other comments here from the commission on that? Any other public comments? Anything online? Oh, Jay, yeah, yes.
Yes, thank you. I just like to take this opportunity just to thank Russ and the finance team, but really what you've seen is just spectacular, I think, and the depth and the ability to synthesize and put into words what's very complex numbers and make it kind of simple so we can get a grasp of what's going on. We're just at the preliminary. Can you imagine what this is going to look like when we get into the draft and then to the final draft that we're going to turn into the county? And I'm very excited that we're working with the county already. We have now our next meeting set up and also working with District 5 on the budget. And these concepts now are not only just here at the local level, but they're also being embraced by the county. And that's just makes me feel so good. And I'm sure that the finance team that all of this is for moving all this forward and looking for then the budget as it comes recommended from the county in May. So that's kind of where we're going. The big picture, the big term, I think is bold. I think it's aggressive, but I don't think it's over our skis. We've really tried hard to do the evacuation routes and learn what it's like to go into an I-280 project. We know we have a lot of research to do on the fire facility, but we also know with the housing element, the growth and projection of what this district's going to become, the increase in density and population, we better have some solutions. Because as these aspirations are put in front of the town for more density and more housing, we as a disaster organization have to have solutions. And so that fire facility, at least the recognition of it, setting funds aside makes a very strong statement that we are going to look into that fire protection. It will also help us, I think, dramatically with the residents who are losing their homeowners insurance and their fire protection to have another fire facility, and then to have the apparatuses that we've ordered over the last number of years that are going to be coming forward. So you can see how this big picture starts to build for the future and the vision of the district. So I thank Russ Morale, the whole team that has come on. You've got an amazing group behind you. So thank you.
I appreciate those comments. And it gives me great confidence knowing how all the staff's been involved in this and how it all rolls up and been very transparent. I've had the luxury of seeing this presentation in its earlier form and now, so almost twice. And it's been a great opportunity for people to really see what we're doing and know what we're doing. And it's as much as we try and bring the budget to actuals down, this still reflects all the work that's going on everywhere, and it's really impressive. So,
and so President Spreen, I imagine then, based upon the comments, then we'll proceed to work on the narrative. What this body will see in January is the full narrative, and also the service area budget as well.
And just to help you with the direction, my lack of comments may be a consensus for it, but does anyone have any problem with the fund concept? I certainly don't, but I want to surface any issues. I think the more we can reflect what we're actually doing, I think a separate fund, more so than just marking off, sort of we're allocating, we're sort of thinking about reserving. I think we do that already kind of with our fund. we're thinking this much goes to that, this much goes to that, but no one sees it on the outside. This would make sure that anyone who looks at us from the outside sees that we have a reserved plan for some very large items that are happening. I think it reflects what we do much more transparently and much more directly. So I'm certainly a fan of it. So I just want to make sure that I can call it out to you to get explicit direction that I see nothing but nodding heads on that score. Any other comments or
just one quick comment. I think annually our response times are slowest in Los Altos Hills compared to other parts of the county, and that right there is your justification, your proof of why we are lacking another fire station and the benefits of having one.
Yep.
You know, when you're in time of need, how long do you want to be lying there waiting? You know, this just improves the survivability of somebody in a medical emergency or, you know, fire. So,
and I'm sure that the process of discussing that is going to have a lot of discussions with the town and with the fire department, fire district, and the county in terms of the needs and how it fits with the housing efforts going on in the town and so forth. So there's a lot of discussion to be done. This is just reserving that we recognize this is a significant item we've talked about for quite a few years. This is the first step at really realizing what makes sense. And so, as I said, it's all investigation in front of us. Yes,
I'd like
Jim.
to make a comment as a resident of the town as opposed to a commissioner. I live in the lower Page Mill area, and I think a fire facility of some sort that enables a quicker response to an emergency is music to my ear and my neighbors' ears. So thank you.
Great. Anything else? In that case, thank you, Russ, for the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your involvement in that. And I guess you have sufficient direction and discussion. Okay, in that case, moving on to item 10 is going to be skipped because we that's the it's being held the next regular commission meeting. That's the resolution. So item 10 is receiving a report on the I-280 hazardous fuel reduction project planning. Commissioner Warren will be giving us some sort of report.
Happy to. So Commissioner McDonald and I met last week with the members of the staff on the I-280 team. The big item to report out this month is that the team has decided to change the approach for soliciting our bids for our technical services and construction manager to a request for statement of qualifications, an RF SOQ. This is to allow us to not have to go with the lowest bidder, but to go with the most qualified bidder. And why this is important, as we talked about last month, is that we have, as you see, this TS and CM firm is not just for I-280. It's going to be involved in planning, the research, all of the activities around the fire facility, helping us with the evacuation routes. What we're really doing here is we're laying the groundwork to have the services for complex services from an engineering firm to allow us to execute on projects. And we talked about the variance in the budget. Part of that has been our ability to enable these projects to get them off the ground. We need these services. So instead of spending staff time to do this 3 times, 4 times, we want to find the right firm that can meet our needs. And that's why the decision was to go to an RF SOQ to find the right firm that can meet this broad spectrum of requirements to support these projects. And so that we don't have to redo this with staff time every time we want to engage in one of these projects. So that's the big change in the, in going out and to find the TSC and M firm, but it really doesn't change. By doing that, it does not change our timeline to get that firm on board by middle of February. Toby, did I miss anything? So
great.
So yeah, so the staff is on timeline to working on this now and in December with the intent of having the firm on board in mid-February. General Manager Logan, did I miss anything?
No, I think that was very comprehensive and a good summary. I would say that the internal team meets every week on I-280 project on Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And then we meet with the ad hoc committee. We report to them as to what our progress is. So we have a cadence going now, and we do that right before the commission meeting. So it's a good cadence. We've got a really good team, and we're populating the RSFOQ. And tomorrow we're going to meet at 10 o'clock and hope that we finalize the RSFOQ to turn over to County Council, which will take a few weeks to review it. And then we exchange the documents back and forth. And that's a very, very comprehensive process. So I'm really thrilled with the process and how we've stepped up, just knowing how to do these things and to do it efficiently, effectively, having the right people, the right training of those individuals. So we, as an attorney or as the consultant or as the engineer, the general analyst, whomever that person is, feels that hand in glove kind of rapport in the team. And it really is a nice way to go. So very pleased with the cadence that we've established to make our timelines. They're ambitious, they're adventurous, and we're going to get there. So we'll be back to you, hopefully to present you with a proposed agreement for the engineering professional consulting firm, which will serve as technical advisor and construction manager for a number of these projects. So that's the grand hope.
Yeah, and I think one of the other important things is that, I don't know if we mentioned it last month, but we're going to be able to use Periscope from the county to
Yes, thank you.
solicit the bids.
Could you mention that, please? Because that's very good. Go
Right.
ahead.
No, that as part of this is that to solicit the bid, we're going to be able to use the county's system. I believe it's called Periscope, which is their system to solicit bids. So the request for proposals will go broad to a large set of firms who monitor that. So we'll get good exposure. So we'll get good responses, and it's nice that we're able to leverage the county in that process.
Great. Any any comments here on this? Any public comments? Mhm.
Yes, thank you. I understand the change to the request for a statement of qualification. I guess my question with regards to that is how is the award actually done after you decide you have 5 or 6 people who are qualified to do the work? How is the actual consultant contractor selected? Second thing I'd like to say is that one of the projects is to provide services for the assessment of the district vacant parcel for a future fire facility and the capital improvement projects if building a new fire facility is approved. I don't see any synergy between the I-280 project and that statement. It would seem to me that the type of organizations that are capable of doing those two things are different from one another. And the timing is certainly different from one another. So, and also the project has to do with construction management. There hasn't even been a decision as to what type of facility is going to be built. So how can you award a contract for construction management for something that hasn't even been designed or described? So in my opinion, that item should be left out and handled separately from the other. Just one last statement on the previous comment. I left out one comment about the budget. As you know, I haven't been an enthusiastic supporter of the Palo Alto fire station. And I think if you review the actual number of responses that that fire station responded to relative to the $600,000 cost that fire station cost, I think you'll find that the cost is just astronomical on a per response basis. And I think it would be more beneficial to have a upstaffing when there's a high fire danger related activity than to staff that station all the time. So maybe you'll consider that when you talk about the budget. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Actually, we'll ask just a question, just the first one in terms of what is the process?
Keep me honest. We discussed this at the last meeting. I believe the plan is a committee of 3 individuals that would be selected to do the evaluation. It would not be an individual from FNL. They've recused themselves. And I think it was the mentioning of probably someone from county staff, probably someone from our staff, and a third individual to be named would be the selection committee that would actually, after they've been scored, look at the proposals and make the final recommendation.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. By the way, I think this is the biggest number of acronyms I've had in a while. TSCMRFSOQ. I have to add it to my list so I can sound smart when I use that one. Okay. Moving on to item 12, personnel. Item 12A provides for the commission consideration of the general manager employment contract, which expires on December 31st of this year. Previously, the commission conducted a performance evaluation of the general manager. That was back in, I think, the June timeframe, completing that process in June. The staff report in the packet provides the employment contract history. The commission recognizes the continuing outstanding performance of the general manager. I think I can say that without speaking for everybody here. They're welcome to join me, but I think it's, I have nothing but the highest of compliments to say for the performance of our general manager. And all you have to do is look at the contrast of where we are today versus where we've come from, from 5 years ago, and the level of staff we have here, the level of projects we're doing, the level of transparency to residents that we have, the level of accessibility we have to residents, and the level of things that we're looking for in the future. I can't say enough. So that's my own personal statement on that. I have a proposed update for the board's approval and public consideration regarding the annual salary information, which is missing in the posted agreement included in the agenda packet. As the designated labor negotiator for the district general manager position, I discussed the compensation for this role with General Manager Logan, and based on that discussion, now recommend that the board approve a contract with a 9.6% salary increase, which takes her from $260,000 to $260,000 per year to $285,000 per year rate, and which also changes her vacation accrual from 15 days per year to 20 per year. And I will, in a minute, be reading that in more legalistic detail, but I wanted to bring out the substantive summary for everyone who's listening, so that would be very clear. We will now consider the approval of that proposed Sixth Amendment, the General Manager Employment Agreement. And when I'm done reading this, the commission can speak up in terms of any comments on that as well. So if you'll forgive me while I read some of the longer term terminology. California Government Code Section 54953 C3 requires the commission to orally report a summary of the proposed compensation before taking final action to adopt that compensation, here by approving the employment agreement. The proposed amendment to the at-will full-time exempt agreement extends the term to December 31st, 2025, and updates the timing for the employee performance evaluation and includes the following compensation. Number one, salary. The proposed amendment increases the annual salary by 9.6% from $260,000 to $285,000 beginning January 1st, 2025. Number two, benefits. Under the proposed agreement, the position will receive certain benefits, including A, vacation accrual effective January 1st, 2025. In addition to all previously accrued and unused vacation days, 20 days of vacation leave shall be provided per year. B, effective January 1st, 2025, sick leave of 40 hours per year. 3, as an exempt employee, the proposed amendment does not provide holiday pay, although the position shall not be expected to work on federal or California holidays unless required for district business needs. 4, the proposed employment agreement does not provide medical benefits or retirement benefits. If the district offers a retirement plan or a health benefit plan, the employee will be eligible to enroll in such plans. 5, all other compensation and benefits, including technology stipend and vehicle stipend, remain unchanged. Any clarifying questions from the commission? It's understandable. Let's see. In that case, I would entertain a motion for this.
Warren moves.
Sherlock seconds.
And I'm open for discussion. I'll offer any. Start with Jim. Sorry, on the right. Work our way here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to air my
Please do. Now's a good time for that.
pleasure.
Mhm.
I have really two such comments. One is as a commissioner that coming on board and how she has helped me with my onboarding and coaching along the way and making sure that I'm effective as a commissioner on this commission board. So I'm really delighted. And also, just as President Spreen pointed out, all you have to do, take a look at what's happened at the staffing profile and the level and competencies and work that's being done, the breakdown of the board, and just top-down structures, bottom-up structures, every way you look at it. I think this is just amazing. I thank you very much for all you're doing for our community.
Thank you.
Well, Jay, it's a pleasure to be able to do this and move to put this on the agenda for approval. The sixth, I didn't know if we'd get to the sixth version of this when we started this journey. So thank you.
Well, as the longest serving member of this vaunted commission here, I can definitely speak to the improvements, the changes we've seen. And I say with pride that I was the president of this board when we first hired general manager. You were there. You were there. But I
Well, you were president.
was president. And I'm very proud of that and continue to be proud. You make me proud every day.
Here.
Yeah, you know, Jay, I mean, the 4 years I was here, it's amazing how the entire organization has grown and what all you've accomplished. As a resident, when I drive around Los Altos Hills now, I see the projects that we've done every day. And it's an amazing achievement to see how much safer we've made our community over those last 4 years, and especially the last maybe year and a half, right? So it's just, it's sad to leave, but it's been such a pleasure to get this opportunity to work with you, and you certainly deserve all the things that you have gotten in this contract. So thank you. It's been
And
great.
thank you, Jay, for all of your patience and help, nursing me along and teaching me. I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you so much. Now we will, any public comment on this item? Mhm. Oh, okay. Let the record show it was a positive one. Okay.
I just wanted to thank the commission, of course, and thank the leadership. I've had the pleasure to be hired by George Tyson and the commission at the time, and then immediately he stepped down and left the rookie general manager to Mark Warren, who I served 3 years with. And thank you, Mark, who's known for the longest commission meetings.
The longest He's now the longest.
There was a little rivalry going there. And, you know, President Spreen, thank you so much for all that you've done and your support. But the main group I want to thank is sitting across the table, and the staff. Denise, thank you for coming on the 3rd month of my hire here, who told me that we have a fire problem when I thought all we had to do was just get a band of certs together and we would be fine. So thank you for that. And then the rest of the team. And I've got to tell you, I was going through the project reports the other day that are on consent, and I was so inspired I had to write each of them a thank you note, because if you read those projects reports, I don't know how you do it every month. And that is because they're engaged, they're initiated. And you know, these people sitting on the other side of the room who've been through wildfires, they've been through devastation. If you watch their videos, you can hear it in their voice, and they're here to make sure that we have done everything we can that doesn't happen to this community. And the hallmark of my interview was when one of the commissioners on the interview team said to me, "What will you do so I can rest at night and know that I've done everything I possibly can for the community?" And that's been that's been my guiding light, my hallmark in being here. So thank you for the collective wisdom, the collective energy, the inspiration. I think we're setting some new marks for what I consider to be good government sector benefit to the community, where we can be a government of delight that puts smiles on people's face at very dire times. And that's what we need when we get into disaster, that people will turn to us and know that we're there for them. So thank you to the team and to everyone.
Great. If there's no further discussion, we will now vote.
President Spreen,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Basiji,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent. I did want to just add real quick that agreement, because as you had stated, what's posted does not include the salary information. So that agreement will have the salary information added, be signed by county council, and then I will post it to the website agenda packet once it is completed.
Great.
And just for clarification, Corey, it'll also include the change to the vacation days, which was read in.
Correct. I got noted that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We will move on now to items 12B through 12D. General Manager Logan, please introduce these items.
Okay, well, thank you. Agenda items 12B through 12D are to discuss and take possible action to approve the following: the proposed First Amendment to the Project Specialist CERT Employment Agreement. 12C, the position description and at-will employment agreement for an administrative specialist. And 12D, the position description and at-will employment agreement for a full-time project specialist risk reduction. The proposed employment agreements are proposed descriptions are included in the Board of Commissioners agenda material. And for these items, Government Code Section 45953C3 requires the Commission to orally report a summary of the proposed compensation before taking final action to adopt that compensation. hereby approving the employment agreements. Key components of the proposed compensation are described in detail in the proposed employment agreements. The proposed First Amendment to the at-will part-time temporary employment agreement extends the term to August 31st, 2025, adjusts the monthly hours of work, and includes the following changes to compensation. Wages, no change in the rate of pay of $30 an hour. Total compensation during the term of the agreement, which is June 18th of 24 through August 31st of 2025, shall not exceed $24,000. 2, all other compensation and benefits, including sick leave, remain unchanged from the original employment agreement.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Nope. Let's see. I will entertain a motion and a second. We'll have to do this a few times.
Pasigi moves that we approve.
McDonald seconds.
Great. Any discussion? I see we have a public comment.
Yeah, I have no objections to any of these agreements. I just have a question with regards to the agreements. As I've mentioned before, I wonder why it's necessary to read each of these out in a public session. I know that's necessary in the case of the general manager because that's covered by state code, but I just question why this is necessary for the others. And just with regards to section G about no other fringe benefits, the district has put in place now this QSERA program and the 457 program, and I just wonder whether the agreement is still, what should I say, correct or appropriate in light of that change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll continue.
Okay. Yes, can I just proceed? Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, we need to vote. Yeah. President Spreen?
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock?
Yes.
Commissioner Basigi?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Okay, I will now summarize personnel item 12C, which is the administrative specialist. The proposed at-will hourly employment agreement includes an effective date of December 1st, 2024, and the following compensation. Wages sets the rate of pay at $85 an hour up to an average of 32 hours per week. Benefits, the position will receive certain benefits, including vacation accrual of 12 days per year with a maximum accrual at any one time of 120 hours or 15 days. Sick leave accrual of 1 hour earned per 30 hours worked up to a maximum accrual of 120 hours. Material stipend of $120 per month. The proposed employment agreement does provide holiday pay at a rate of 6.5 hours for California and federal holidays. The agreement does not provide medical benefits or retirement benefits, but if the district offers the retirement plan or health benefit plan, the employee will be eligible to enroll in such plans. District provides a laptop and supportive equipment necessary for the performance of duties. Thank you.
Any clarifying questions? Expecting no questions. No questions from the commission. How about a motion?
Tyson moves item C.
Warren seconds.
Great. Seeing no discussion. Any public comments on this one? Seeing none. Let's roll call.
President Spreen?
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock? Commissioner Basigi? Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Great. And one more.
I will now summarize personnel item 12D, Project Specialist Risk Reduction. The proposed at-will full-time employment agreement includes the effective date of December 1st, 2024, and the following compensation. Wages sets the rate of pay at $80 an hour. Benefits, the position will receive certain benefits, including vacation accrual of 15 days per year with a maximum accrual at any one time of 120 hours or 15 days. Sick leave accrual of 1 hour earned per 30 hours worked up to a maximum accrual of 120 hours. Material stipend of $120 per month. Vehicle stipend of $250 per month. A uniform allowance of up to $2,000 during the first year of employment for special items identified in the proposed employment agreement. The proposed agreement does provide holiday pay, but does not provide medical benefits or retirement benefits. If the district offers a retirement plan or a health benefit plan, the employee will be eligible to enroll in such plan. District provides laptop and supportive equipment necessary for performance of the duties. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? None. Any, how about a motion?
CG moves that we approve.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any public comments? Seeing none. Let's take a roll call.
Okay, President Spreen?
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock? Commissioner Basigi?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Thank you very much, everybody. Since item 12E is being held to the next regular commission meeting, we will move to item 13. Item 13A is which is commission member reports. 13A is informing that 4 commissioner terms will expire on December 31st of this year. District Clerk Vargas, you want to present that report?
Yes, thank you, President Spreen. So the county clerk of the board informed us that the expiration date for the 4 commissioner terms has been revised to 12/31/24. You'll remember at previous meetings, we had stated 12/6/24. So a reminder that interested residents of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District are required to submit an electronic application to the office of the clerk of the Board of Supervisors using the website link to the Santa Clara County portal, which is provided on the agenda. Santa Clara County District 5 Supervisor Joe Smithian makes the appointment and nominations, which are then considered for approval by the County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on this? Not all more of a report. See, any public comment on this? Sure, what's to comment on? Great. Moving on to 13B, future agenda items. This is an opportunity for commissioners to provide reports on any future agenda topics. Any comments from commissioners? Seeing none. Any public comments on that? Seeing none. Moving on to 13C. This is to approve cancellation of the December 17th, 2024 regular commission meeting. Any comments on that? Is anyone really hell-bent on meeting anyway? One more time, Joe? Yeah. Just for old time's sake. And boy, thanks to staff for getting all this stuff done in time to have December off. That's a gift to us and a gift to everybody to make everything get done. And I appreciate everything the general manager has done to really make things get done by then. So we really appreciate that making that possible to be able to continue this tradition. I will now entertain a motion. With the commissioner making the motion and one seconding. Yeah, do you want to?
I'm moving to.
You want to move to get rid of December's meeting? Your last official act?
McDonald seconds.
McDonald seconds. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. Let's roll call.
President Spreen?
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock? Commissioner Basigi?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Okay, and the motion passes 6-0 with one absent.
Moving on to item 13D. This is notice that the next regular commission meeting is scheduled for January 21st, 2025. Oh my gosh, in person and hybrid at the Town Hall Council Chambers right here. Any comments? Who knows? I guess most of us will be here then. Any public comments on that scheduled date? Seeing none, then we will move on to item 14, adjournment. This concludes the November 19th, 2024 regular meeting of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District. The meeting is adjourned at 9:06 p.m. General Analyst Georgie, please stop the recording.